The first time I saw the villa, I was 7 years old. My mom had wrapped her arm around my shoulders as we stood at the edge of the porch, the sea breeze teasing my braids, the sky stretched out like a promise. "This," she whispered, "is where we'll build our memories." She wasn't lying. That old villa in Charleston, with its salt-worn shutters and creaky floorboards, became the heartbeat of my childhood. Every summer, we escaped the noise of Atlanta and found peace under those cypress trees. I learned to ride a bike on the gravel path behind the house. I had my first heartbreak on that porch swing, cried into my mom's lap while the waves crashed in soft sympathy. That house wasn't just wood and nails, it was her soul woven into every corner. My name is Brooke, and that villa was the only thing in this world that ever truly felt like mine. Mom died when I was 16. Stage 4 breast cancer. It came hard and fast, like life had a vendetta against peace. Watching her wither away in the same home she once danced barefoot in felt like the cruelest kind of poetry. I was there with her till her last breath, holding her hand as she whispered, "Keep this place alive, baby. Promise me." I promised. God, I promised. After the funeral, my dad changed overnight. He had always been more practical than emotional, but now he was cold, like he couldn't stand to look at me because I reminded him too much of her. Within a year, he remarried. Her name was Linda. Think country club smile, pearl necklace, and that insufferable habit of calling me sweetie while looking down her nose at everything my mom ever touched. Linda had a daughter from her first marriage, Jessica. And let me tell you, Jessica was every bit the nightmare you'd expect from someone who was raised on indulgence and Dior perfume. We were the same age, but we couldn't have been more different. While I was working part-time and applying for scholarships, Jessica was crashing her third car and calling it a learning experience. From the outside, we looked like a blended family. But inside, I always felt like the outsider in my own home. Especially after Mom passed. But through it all, the villa stayed untouched. My sanctuary. My escape. Even after Dad insisted on renting out our family house in Atlanta and moving in with Linda full-time, he let me keep the villa as it was. I visited whenever I could, sometimes just to sit on the porch and breathe. I believed he honored Mom's memory in that way. When I turned 28, I finally started saving enough money to renovate the villa. My dream was to turn it into an artist's retreat, a quiet haven for women like my mom, women who carried the weight of the world but never complained. I started drawing up plans. I even had a contractor friend give me a quote. It was the first time in a long time that I felt excited again. Like, maybe life could still give me something good. But then came that day. I still remember the feel of my key not turning in the lock. My first thought was that I was using the wrong one. I tried the spare. Nothing. Confused, I peeked through the front window and froze. Everything was empty. The wicker chairs, the wind chimes, Mom's embroidered pillows, all gone. Instead, there was a sterile, gutted shell of what used to be my home. There was a cold little lockbox on the front door with a generic Remax sticker. I remember standing there with my mouth open, heart pounding, palms shaking. I called my dad, expecting some mistake. Maybe he hired a cleaning service? Maybe there'd been a break-in? But his voice was calm, almost rehearsed. "Brooke, don't panic. Look, Jessica's been going through a rough time. She got into some trouble, financial trouble. There were people coming after her. I had no choice." "What do you mean, you had no choice?" I could barely get the words out. "You sold the villa?" "My villa," he sighed, like I was the problem. "Technically, your mother never finalized the transfer. The deed was still in my name. Legally, I could. I needed to." I went silent, because if I didn't, I would have screamed. He sold my dream to clean up her mess. The same girl who once mocked my thrift store shoes was now worth the house my mom died in? That day, something inside me cracked. Not just from the betrayal, but from the realization that everything I held sacred could be so casually discarded by the people who were supposed to protect me. But I didn't beg. I didn't yell. I walked back to my car with my spine straight and my jaw locked. I wasn't going to let it end like that. They had taken something irreplaceable from me. Now it was my turn to take something from them. And I was going to do it my way, quietly, smartly, and with all the grace my mom taught me. I don't think I slept for 3 days after that call. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling of my cramped apartment, letting the pain settle in like damp air. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mom's face on the porch, smiling with a light behind her. Every breath I took felt like a betrayal, to her memory, to the girl I used to be who once believed that love and loyalty meant something. I replayed Dad's words again and again in my mind. Technically, your mother never finalized the transfer. Technically, that word haunted me. It was how cowards justify betrayal. By the end of the week, I finally built the courage to drive to my father's house, the one he now shared with Linda and Jessica. I knew I wasn't going to get the villa back that day, but I needed to see the look in his eyes when he told me to my face that my grief, my memories, and my dreams were worth less than Jessica's bad choices. Linda opened the door. "Brooke," she chirped, overly bright. "What a surprise. Come in, sweetie." Sweetie. I wanted to scream. She led me into the kitchen where Jessica sat at the marble island, scrolling on her phone like nothing in the world had touched her. She had a fresh manicure and a sparkling diamond necklace that looked suspiciously new for someone who was supposedly drowning in debt. Dad came in a few minutes later, holding a glass of scotch like he always did when he knew he was about to say something selfish and didn't want to feel it. I got straight to the point. "Why didn't you tell me you were selling the villa?" He didn't look at me right away. "I didn't want to upset you. You've always been so emotional about that place." I blinked. Emotional? You mean the house my mom died in? The only thing she left me? Jessica didn't even glance up from her phone. "Oh, come on, Brooke. It's not like you were even using it. Dad said it was falling apart anyway." My blood boiled, but I stayed seated. I wouldn't let her see me break. I was saving to fix it up. I had plans. That place was supposed to become something meaningful. But instead, you sold it behind my back because I gestured toward Jessica. "Can't manage a credit card limit." Jessica rolled her eyes. "It wasn't just credit cards, okay? It was real. Like, dangerous people." Linda spoke up then. "We had to act fast. Richard made a tough decision. You'll understand one day, when you're a parent." A laugh escaped me, dry and humorless. "He made a decision that wasn't his to make." "Brooke, listen." My dad tried to cut in, but I raised my hand. "No. You listen. You chose her over me. Again. And maybe this time, it's not something I can forgive." The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. Dad stared into his glass. Linda shifted on her feet. Jessica finally looked up and gave me a smirk that made my chest tighten. I walked out without another word. But inside, I was already making a decision. They thought I was weak because I didn't fight back right away. They mistook my silence for surrender. But they had no idea who they had just pushed too far. That night, I stayed up until 2 a.m., researching property laws, wills, and real estate transaction records. I was no legal expert, but I was angry. And let me tell you, a woman with nothing left to lose becomes very dangerous with a laptop and Wi-Fi. I found the county records and scoured every file attached to my mother's estate. And that's when I noticed something odd. 2 versions of her will. One from the lawyer Dad always spoke of, and another, dated 6 months later, filed quietly through a second attorney's office I'd never heard of before. My heart jumped. What if the version Dad showed me wasn't the final one? What if he never even looked at the second one? I reached out to the second attorney's office the next day. I didn't have high hopes, but the moment the assistant pulled up my mom's name, I heard it in her voice. Something was off. She said I'd need to come in person. When I got there, the truth hit me like a thunderclap. My mom had updated her will. She had officially filed it. It had been probated and sealed. And in that updated version, she not only left me the villa, but also other properties I didn't even know she owned, including one crucial plot in downtown Charleston, currently occupied by none other than Linda's boutique. It took everything in me not to burst into tears right there in the lawyer's office. My mother, always thinking ahead, always protecting me. She'd tried to give me roots, to secure my future. And they'd buried it, twisted it, and handed it over to Jessica like it meant nothing. I walked out of that office with copies in hand and a fire in my chest. They thought they won.
But now, the rules had changed.
I wasn't just going to get justice. I was going to rewrite the ending they tried to steal from me. I didn't go back to my father's house. Not even to confront him. I knew something they didn't, and that was power. The moment I walked out of the attorney's office with copies of my mother's real will, the game flipped. I wasn't the grieving daughter anymore. I was the legal heir to everything they had just tampered with. And they had no idea they were standing on a minefield. For weeks, I said nothing. I kept my face calm, stayed off social media, didn't return Jessica's smug texts or Dad's guilt-laced voicemails. I played the role they expected me to play, hurt but passive. Meanwhile, behind the curtain, I was building my move. The new will had made it clear. The villa was mine, free and clear, along with a tucked-away downtown property my mom had purchased quietly after receiving her terminal diagnosis. I had no idea she had bought anything else, much less a space in Charleston's historic shopping district. But there it was, Plot 14 on King Street, recorded in her name, then passed directly to me in the updated will. And guess what stood there now? Linda's beloved boutique. The one she had bragged about for years. The one Jessica used to flaunt as proof of their family's business legacy. Turns out, my dad had never transferred legal ownership properly. They'd been leasing it from what they thought was my dad's trust, using shady paperwork that wouldn't hold up under a sneeze in court. And now that the real will was in hand, that building belonged to me. Let me pause for a second here, and be clear. This wasn't about money. This was about meaning. About my mom, and how they stomped over her last gift to me just to protect someone who never earned anything in her life. I hired a real estate attorney. Quietly. Discreetly. The boutique was technically in violation of several zoning codes. Nothing major, but enough to halt operations unless corrected. I filed the paperwork. Requested a formal review. Then I had my LLC, a shell company I created using my savings, purchase the villa back from the new owners. Yes, I got the villa back. The people who bought it from my dad had already run into delays with their coastal permit. When I offered to buy it back at a reduced price, and they learned the full story, they agreed. The husband even said, "It was never really ours, was it?" Sometimes, you don't need war. You just need quiet truth and the right timing. Within a month, I owned the villa again, and held the deed to the boutique. My lawyer sent a polite but firm letter to Linda, stating that her boutique would be required to shut down for zoning violations and property reassessment unless she could provide a new lease from me. And that's when they started calling. First, it was Dad. "Brooke, what's going on? The city just contacted Linda's business about a review. Is this you?" I smiled into the phone. "Why would I do something like that, Dad? I'm too emotional, remember?" Then Jessica texted, "Are you seriously trying to ruin our lives? That boutique pays our bills." I didn't respond. Instead, I mailed them copies of the revised will. Highlighted. I included a sticky note. It said only one thing. "You stole what was mine. I just took it back." A week later, I walked through the villa again. This time with contractors, architects, and a new vision. The place still smelled like salt and wood. Still echoed with the past. But it felt different now, stronger. Like it had survived just like I had. That night, I stood on the porch and looked out at the ocean, barefoot like I was when I was a child. Mom would have loved what I was about to do with the place. It was finally becoming what I always dreamed it would be. But I wasn't finished yet. Because I had one final move left. And it would be the one they never saw coming. The ocean was still my mother's lullaby. Standing on that porch again, my porch, I could almost hear her humming as she used to, soft and low, like the tide itself leaned in to listen. I wasn't just standing in a house. I was standing in the promise she made me. The one they tried to erase. The one I reclaimed. But this story wasn't ending with a deed or a title. Because some people only understand consequences when they arrive with witnesses. And I wasn't finished. Not until the truth was public. A month later, I hosted the grand reopening of the villa, not as a private retreat, but as the Everly House, named after my mother, a nonprofit wellness center for women recovering from grief, trauma, and loss. The same women she spent her life comforting. I sent press releases to local news outlets. I put together a photo gallery of my mother's life, her handwritten notes, and letters she wrote in her final months about the legacy she hoped I'd build. I made sure everyone saw the villa's transformation from forgotten relic to healing sanctuary, including my father. He showed up late to the opening alone, standing in the back like a man who no longer belonged. I didn't acknowledge him at first. Instead, I walked to the center of the room, microphone in hand, as the crowd hushed. Most of you didn't know my mother, but she was a quiet warrior. I began, voice steady. This house was her dream. After she passed, some people tried to take that dream away from me. But what they didn't know was she had already protected me. She knew who she could trust, and who she couldn't. There were murmurs, glances exchanged. I caught his eyes, my father's, and I didn't look away. She left me this house. She left me her heart. And today, we reopen it not just for me, but for every woman who's ever had to fight for what was already hers. Applause rose like a wave, soft at first, then strong. But my father didn't clap. He just stood there, stone-faced, lips pressed tight. He looked small. For the first time in my life, I realized he wasn't some towering figure of authority. He was just a man who made a selfish choice and thought no one would ever call him on it. 3 days later, I delivered the final blow. The boutique was still scrambling for a new lease from me. I gave them one, but it came with new terms. Jessica could stay on as manager, but 30% of all profits would be donated to the Everly House. Any missed payments would result in eviction, and the boutique would now display a plaque inside the entrance. This property is dedicated to Everly James, a woman whose quiet strength still shelters those in need. When the terms arrived, Jessica lost it. She emailed me, furious, condescending, desperate. I didn't reply. Linda called my lawyer personally, trying to negotiate. I declined. Dad called me one last time. I never meant to hurt you, he said, voice tired. But you did, I replied. You knew what Mom meant to me, what that house meant, and you threw it away for someone who hasn't worked for anything in her life. He sighed. I thought I was helping the whole family.
No.
You were helping your new family. You just forgot I was part of the old one.
He didn't argue.
He just said, you remind me too much of your mother. That's always made it hard. That one hit deep. Not because it was hurtful, but because it was finally honest. Then maybe that's the only good thing I got from you, I said and hung up. A few weeks later, I sat on the back steps of the villa, barefoot again, coffee in hand, as the sun rose over the Atlantic. My contractors had just finished renovating the guest cottages in the back. Soon, women from all over would come here to rest, to breathe, to start over. And they'd be stepping into something born from betrayal, but built on strength. That's the thing about revenge. People think it's fire and fury. But sometimes, the sweetest revenge is peace, the kind you carve out for yourself when everyone tried to bury you. They sold my future for someone else's mistake. So, I built a legacy from the ashes. One that would whisper my mother's name long after theirs were forgotten. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Your support means everything. If this story touched you or made you think, please subscribe to our channel for more real, powerful stories.